All right, I think we're ready to start.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'd like to call to order the Commission to Study Slavery and the subsequent Jure and the Facto racial economic discrimination against African American. This is January the 6th, 2022. The time's at 2 p.m. at the main conference room library of Virginia. And so at this time, well, first of all, I want to thank each of you for coming. These are some interesting times, and so there were several moments that I thought maybe I need to not cancel and just do virtual. But thank you all for saying, hey, you're going to press your way forward. We do have a forum, and I am delighted to keep this moving forward. So at this time, Billy, I'd like to call the roll, please.
Jody Allen,
Present.
Edward Ayers, Delegate Cole,
Present.
Andrea Douglas, present. John Kinney,
Present.
Senator Locke, Delegate McQuinn,
Present.
Cassandra Newby Alexander,
Present.
Xavier Richardson, Karen Sherry, present. Daniel Watkins.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to the approval of the agenda and the minutes for October the 8th. Please, at this point, I could have a motion for the approval of minutes and the agenda. That's correct.
Make a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda.
The motion has been made and properly second. All those in favor say aye. Those that oppose, there are none. Thank you. At this moment, I would like to take this time to introduce a young lady that certainly there were several of us who had an opportunity to interview individuals who was interested in becoming the project manager and to help facilitate the work that we are trying to do to help keep us or put us on the straight and narrow. I think that all of us concluded it was a massive amount of work and knew that we needed some direction in terms of helping us to get there. And an individual who, wake up in the morning, this is what they're thinking about when they go to bed at night. This is what they're thinking about. And I was so excited when we had, again, the opportunity to interview the individuals who had applied for this position. And we stumbled upon a young lady by the name of Dominique Luster. Dominique, just a little bit about her. She has her own company called the Luster Company that she started back in 2021. That is an archival consulting company that work with people across the country, helping to conduct oral history and research and looking at genealogy and other kinds of initiatives that would help to, I guess, address some of the things that we are certainly looking to do. She worked at Yancey Consulting. She went to, I think, archivist for the Carnegie Museum of Art from May 2016 to April 2021. And it was a project called the Teenie Harris Project that she worked on diligently and was able to do some amazing things through the National Endowment for the Humanities and other places where she was able to secure funds to help her and as she moved forward in this particular project. She went to the University of Pittsburgh. She is a Bachelor of Arts in Theater from the University of Kentucky. She also had Fulbright U.S. student program in Berlin and went to Berlin, Germany. I'm just going to read a little, from her a letter that she wrote. And the letter was a letter from me to you. And she said, I believe in the power of storytelling. I have experienced the phenomenal power of history making when some stories are uplifted and some are erased. I began the Luster Company as an international outpour to champion historically, institutionally, and systemically marginalized voices. It would be an honor and a privilege to join forces with the Commission to study slavery and subsequent de jure and de facto racial and economic discrimination against African Americans. I have worked as an archivist and information professional since 2013 more. I have worked in the direct service of African American history, record keeping, and she said, my work in this field has been shaped and mentored by Black women and has led me to opportunity to present a TED Talk on racially conscious, culturally competent archival practices. She went on and she talked a little bit about the Teenie Harris project that she collaborated and was commissioned to do. So having reviewed the commission's charge, she said, I understand that this group of legislative citizens have been tasked with researching and analyzing the contemporary impact and long-term inequities of chattel enslavement in the Commonwealth of Virginia. She said, if you know that, but I also understand that if you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. And then she quoted the scripture, John 13. Therefore, I'm glad to see the commission is also charged with making tangible and applicable recommendations to the General Assembly. The commission has a great deal of work before them and not a lot of time before the July 2022 expiration. Therefore, I'm aware of how paramount it will be to partner with a project manager who has been down this road before and can provide organizational stability along the way. And so, and it goes on and on. So we will make sure that each of you have this letter in your packet as well. But again, extremely impressed by her words, her interaction, her communication, where she's been, the road that she's taken to get there, and the many individuals along the way that she's had an opportunity to meet, and then just grasp the information that they handed to her. So at this time, I would like to introduce to the commission none other than Dominic Luster. Dominic Luster, you have it.
Oh, I think I'll just stand here. I just wanted to say good afternoon. It's an honor and a privilege to meet you all. I look forward to being of service to you as you're pursuing this work, and however I can be of help. My ear and my phone is always available to you, so please let me know how I can help. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if the commission, if they have any questions, anything you want to ask her at that time, we want to give you that opportunity at this time. You're going to crowd. Thank you. Again, thank you, Ms. Luster. We look forward to working with you. We're excited about the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you. All right, at this time, I think there are several persons who have come in the lead. I think it's okay. At this time, we will look at and review and have some discussion on the draft work plan. So this is a draft. And so it's subject to vision, deleting, adding to it, whatever, however you may see fit. As we talk about the planning and the timeline and helping to move this forward. We are in a place that where we will be helping to give directions to Dominique as she moves forward. So I'm excited that she's here today, and she would have privilege to some of the conversation around the table as we look at, again, the planning and the timeline. helping to address the direction that we need to take. To move forward.
Elliot McQueen,
Yes.
I know we had some conversation about this in the past, but the indicated time of termination of this commission and the possibility and probability that it would have to be extended. Where are we in that discussion?
Okay, thank you. We are submitting again to the General Assembly, asking for, and we are asking for a 2-year, right? You want to come
Yes,
say
Madam
thank
Chair,
you?
the legislation asks for a 2-year extension as well as for the citizen, for the non-legislative citizen members to remain the same.
And then additional asking for, because the first year, we only got started when the second year, basically. And so the resources at that time was, what, a little bit over $200,000.
Yeah, about
So we're gonna do a budget amendment as well,
right.
as for additional dollars. We're gonna cover that. Okay. Is that just my question about it?
Well, I think that might be to me I feel with that. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Sandy?
Delvin, I just wanted to explain a little bit about the work plan that's here. We are hoping what you just described happens, but we developed a work plan on the contingent that we know we have 6 months, right? So that's what we had to work with here. And we wanted to draft something. Dominique's first day is actually Monday, next Monday. So she hasn't had a chance to start, but when she does, we wanted her to start strong out of the gate. So whatever you decide, however you decide to tweak this, will be what she uses to guide her, and starting on Monday when she's here. So that's why it shows that time frame, because that's the only one we know for certain we have.
And Dr. Kenny, the other piece of all of that, I mean, we're going to, along with the senator here, to, try to make certain that we can get it over the finish line. But the other piece is that we'll work as diligently as possible to also, if there's any dynamic that goes on in the General Assembly, to identify and find dollars to make sure that this work it continues. So, yes, sorry, Jerry.
When will the decision be made? Do we know what's the timeline?
Well, the General Assembly, we have a 60-day session this year, so that's a long, supposed to be a long session. But anyway, General Assembly actually starts next week. And so the legislation will, at that time, will be in or be submitted. And then it will go through the process of going through committees and whatnot. So hopefully I would think by mid-February. Don't ask me. You got it first. So I would assume probably somewhere about mid-February. Yeah. And the General Assembly. It would go before, is it rules? Rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So house rules, and I think that just have the house.
That sends a lot. All right, so we're gonna look at this then, and let's see, can we, and just get your thoughts on it as we look at mission and goals and outcomes. Project manager, so we have that here. Meet with commission in the Library of Virginia. Finalizing key facts and findings, or finalize process and time. Public comment. Okay, so Sandy, you want to help me a little bit on this one?
Sure, I may let Greg do that since his
Greg.
staff did, I worked it up, but yes.
Oh, Dylan McQuinn, which one are you?
The top.
We're just at the top.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Mission goals and the outcomes, okay? Yes, we-
Yes, so I think we actually have a pretty good, really, it's largely based on the legislation,
Mhm.
which lays out very clearly that there's, I think, 6 subject areas where our inquiry will occur. And I think we confirmed that at one of our earliest meetings. And since we do have the process and timeline, that's quite what we're doing right now. I do think we need to think about what our public comment and participation will look like during the course of this. That is something that has not been determined. And one other thing I should say about this as well, and it also goes down into the research and preliminary analysis. What I would suggest is that our program manager, Ms. Lester, consult with each one of the commission members on their area of expertise one-on-one. I think probably be more efficient in terms of time. And obviously we have many people, like say, Dr. Richardson, who obviously is an expert on health, to have those one-on-one conversations, talk about things like, who are the experts in the field? What is the state of the scholarship? And to bring that together. So that would be part of that subject expert consultation. That's in the second piece of the timeline. We do want to talk to outside scholars as well. And I know that Delegate McQuinn, you were interested in maybe bringing some more people in to speak to us.
Yes.
And I think that would definitely be part of that as well. After we do a lot of that consulting, we probably need to relook at the research plan. And the key there, I think, is what has already been done, like who's already done the work for us, and which areas may require more attention. So that's that identifying gaps in the scholarship. There may be, as quick as turnaround as this has, it may be that we're going to have a final report that does have some questions that we can't answer, but that are worthy of future exploration. So obviously, we need to think about when that project, that third piece, when we bring some preliminary findings to you and give you a report on sort of where we are. And then it's, a lot of the work then is consolidating all this material into a final report. And we've been looking at some other reports that have been issued recently. I know you may be familiar, of course, with the report on many of the antiquated laws of Virginia related to race. That was done recently. I think that format is a reasonable one and probably would be a good one to use. So that's kind of a quick overview of sort of how I see things proceeding.
Right, and I think some of this, a lot of been discussions that we've already had. Particularly, I know the one we talked about bringing outside scholars and consultants. And I think that there was, I know at the first meeting, we asked for any suggestions that any of you may have that you have as you have traveled and did some of this work over the years, and you're connected, with people at other universities across the country. We want opportunities to certainly bring them in to hear from them based on a lot of times relationships that you may have. And that was one of the reasons that we brought in Dr. Carruthers, who certainly I thought did just an amazing job of helping us to look at the legislation, the work that we're called to do, and how we could approach it. So, we still want to hear from the commissioners in terms of who do you think, who's out there, who they could bring, us some wealth of information based on, the agenda that we have and the objectives that we looked at. And so I hopefully you guys will be thinking about that as we go on and move forward with this, and then helping. Certainly Dominique would certainly bring a wealth of information to us as well as it relates to that.
One of the things that Sandy pointed out, I think is probably reasonable also to say is that obviously that if the General Assembly does extend the commission, then this timeline would change dramatically. And it would give us probably time to do some, perhaps some even primary research to resolve some of the things that might not be documented in the existing literature. So at that time, I think we can reevaluate what the schedule looks like.
And we could call it an interim report, not a final report then, because we would continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it, do you have your information?
Not yet.
Huh?
I believe
You
starting
actually
next
have an
week.
email address. Yeah, it's really simple. So it's Dominique Luster at lva.virginia.gov. So it'd be just like the rest of the Library of Virginia staff's emails, pretty simple. So that's already set up.
Thank you.
But I assume we'll be receiving something that
Yeah.
communicates all of this.
Yes.
So any thoughts on, just, again, and this is preliminary, and you've heard the reason why, I mean, we have looked at it this, from this perspective in terms of the timeline. Have some suggestions of the things that we really need to tackle first, to be helpful. Draft work plan.
This is kind of a practical question, if I may, Madam Chairperson. This is obviously a very compressed schedule, and we're all hopeful that it will be expanded, but in the event that it's not, it might be helpful to start, and Ms. Lester, I hope you don't mind me assigning you tasks, but maybe setting up some kind of shared document or something with the 6 areas of our research, and we can start populating them with things we know or experts we identify, just to help us all be on the same page and not duplicate efforts.
Okay.
And
Is there
if I may, please, sorry, we have an internal document that's set up exactly like that. That'll be, I'm sure, one of the first things we look at on Monday when Dominique comes to work. And we could share that, and you can kind of, then you can see what we've already looked at. So yes, and we have it all Google Drive.
Is that correct? That is going to be a place too that we can put in information.
Yeah, I think what we probably do just, just to make sure we don't be at 2 cross purposes, maybe just duplicate them and create a drive for you to enter data.
Okay. Okay. Great. Let's talk a little bit about the public comment participation. I guess in terms of processes that we could use to, I mean, we certainly have, social media, but I guess at the appropriate time, hoping that we'll get through this period that we're in, some kind of public forums or town hall, that we could come together and invite community conversations, invite the community overall to be a part of this. One of the things we did with the Martin King Commission, actually, we went all over the state to various places that actually Dr. King had been where he spoke. And I mean, this may be an opportunity to be more engaging. It's limited right now, but once we can get past this, assuming that we will go beyond June, and hopefully this COVID or pandemic doesn't go beyond June, but anyway, then opening it up in ways that the public can have input into this. We have universities that, schools. Correct, so, historic sites, yeah. I think that is, and I think it's okay for us to start thinking of where would we want something like this, to have those public forums, in a Commonwealth. To get people engaged in talking about these particular issues.
Might be good also to have a form that people can fill out online. If they can't come, or if they don't want to come, they can identify themselves or be anonymous, so they can have that opportunity to get feedback on what they would like to see.
And before, you mean like setting something up in terms of with the link and all that we're talking about, setting up to have a place for people. Okay.
And I think it would just be one of the things. I mean, I think the town halls and the visiting the different communities is great, but as an addition to that, to folks who either couldn't or are not comfortable. So I think that opportunity to come.
That can be extremely helpful in accessing resources that may not be in the normal circulation patterns that we access. There are many documents and stories and experiences that people have had where they can document how it affected their community, how it affected certain families, but may not be accessible in the normal patterns. If they do something like that to say, well, let me tell you about this and let me tell you how to get this information.
They can also say they were willing to be interviewed, but they knew people that needed to be.
Collecting oral histories. Now, there are some places that, was they doing something like that at DCU? Collecting oral histories?
I mean, that like NBC because of Oral Fish Project. They're doing that at William Mary.
Okay.
I think a lot of places.
UVA has one for the commission and members and also it's good.
Okay.
Charlottesville is really.
Hi, this is Cassandra Newby Alexander. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We can see
Good.
you as well.
I'm so sorry. I'm in quarantine right now. I wanted to make a recommendation, and that is for our manager to reach out to the Virginia Humanities. Over the years, they have sponsored a number of oral histories, especially of African Americans throughout the Commonwealth. And so each of these entities has their own collection of those oral histories. And it spans cultural, economic, political, et cetera, et cetera. And so that might be the best way to kind of crowdsource a lot of that information and get it very quickly.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So is there to this based on, again, the draft work plan, you all have, is there anything that you think needs to be added? Or, I mean, I think probably it covers a lot, it's broad, and I think any subject matter could sort of go under one of these points here. You might want to, there are anything that you, again, but you think need to be done first, so we need to go initially with this. And in terms of the timeline.
I was just thinking that there's a lot of history, a lot of African American history in rural counties. that we don't have a lot of county studies that have been done. So I just, you know, that's, you know, one place to start. I would also think about looking more closely at free clients.
Trying to figure out how to find this. I can't believe that history. There was a place in Fredericksburg called Liberty Town, which was a small area for free African Americans back in the day. It was kind of like a Black Wall Street. They tore it down and got rid of it, and then it was pulled into the city of Fredericksburg. But it was its own private little community, free African Americans back in the day. And the only thing I know about is a little marker that's in Fredericksburg that tells a little bit about the history. But I think that would be something to look into as well, as far as, you know, they were free African Americans and they couldn't know themselves in Fredericksburg. They had their own economy and different things like that. So I think that would definitely be a good thing to look into, especially as part of this commission.
Continue the discussion about public participation, we might want to add a few signposts to this timeline about when we check in with the public. Because we'll want them to be part of the research phase, but then also the reviewing phase, I think, after we have some draft reports and draft materials to present.
So this is in terms of, again, Dominique, you're here, and I know you don't start until Monday, but you could probably, in terms of just looking at the mission goals and objectives, so finalize key facts and findings, so it's finalize processes and timelines, and finalize planning for public comments and participation. And I'm particularly, I guess, sort of looking at this issue of engaging public. I just think that it's so much information that somebody knows about Liberty Town, much more than you would ever know, because they, family members, is part of it, or someone. So how do, again, how do we, and that's going to come about, I guess, through research and, you know, some of it seriously digging in piles of stuff to find it. One of the things that I certainly found out that, you know, our history is just not, I mean, it is sometimes difficult to get to. I mean, that's the bottom line. And, but it is something, and I'm sure around the table, you all have done quite a bit of research in many of these areas. But, you know, if there's any one or two resources, a place of resource we can go. I know we have the library, of course. I hear that a lot. How about the library, the state library? But is there other places that we can certainly go and begin to collect the facts, collect, you know, what we are looking for, but also having opportunity to engage people that may very well go to in these what has happened, you know, in the past, and try to collect that information from them as well. Is there any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think that the first source of resources we would have is to collaborate between the staff at the library and what knowledge they already have of other resources out in the state that can be tied or utilized together in collaboration with the library and other local libraries, maybe small county public libraries, also in collaboration with other commissions or other community groups at the state level that work in historic sites. We could facilitate with our colleagues in what would Virginia call it? It's DHHS, the Department of Health and Human Services. There are probably state hospitals that have local records in counties, local public libraries that have records in counties. So we can still kind of circle our interests within the Library of Virginia community and our colleagues throughout the state, but be able to reach into those counties and to find resources in other places that kind of touch into those areas. It gets us out a little bit, gets us talking to communities, get us talking to our colleagues in other departments and divisions across state agencies. I think that would probably be a great place to start, is to find out what we know and to find out who we know. First ask what and then who, and get all and why, and really cross and see where we can all come together to touch places that we can all find information that we need. That would kind of, again, we still have so much to discuss on Monday. But I think that's where we could start.
Yeah. But I think that's why it's so critical to clarify with a degree of precision the scope of what this commission is assigned to do. Because the minute you enter at any point, you begin to recognize the intersection with so many elements of the Black experience. So precision in what we're called to do in terms of what we want the outcomes of this commission to be. Because I'm listening to her talking, I'm thinking about all these things, and I'm saying, but does that have anything to do, in terms of the precise assignment of this commission? So I think identifying with precision, we've identified 6 things in relation to the actual legislation, and then being able to get to some degree of specificity about where are the places that we need to look, where we can be sure that we're mining data that contributes to the scope of what we're assigned.
Absolutely.
So when Joshua mentioned places I thought of, there may actually be something that wasn't very well, we don't know. They may have this, I don't know that they have California rights. Nobody's ever looked.
Right.
I'd also like to suggest the descendant communities, particularly in central, there's a lot of sort of massive now descendant communities. The gay descendant community has a group that's been formed. Montpelier, Monticello, all these places now are bringing together through their input and other types of activities. Highland also does recent work. So that I think is a core set of plantations where descendants actually are still residing in the area. I also want to point out that for Albemarle County, in terms of sort of thinking about that, that was the 4th richest area as a consequence of chattel slavery. So there's a lot of work that's being done in all of these places that we've talked about in these rural areas, trying to identify that place. So that's also a source.
Along those lines, we might also want to consider getting in touch with, I believe there are 4 chapters of the Afro-American History and Genealogical Society. There's one in Richmond, I think Charlottesville, evidently 2 other chapters. But, a lot of those members are doing the frontline work, going through records, tracing their genealogies and so forth. That would be a good resource for us.
That just was actually on with Justin Reed, the descendant Charles City that.
Yeah. I think it's a movement that's starting to happen, certainly in central Virginia, but I mean, with even the capital descendants, right? So there's still a core group of people that are still living in Virginia that didn't leave, that can trace their histories. So I think that's a good place to start looking, especially since they're organized.
Also, adding to that, colleges and universities around the world, but in particular in Virginia, are really looking lot, and I know that living there, we're not only at the campus, but we're also looking at the greater Williamsburg area. So those are also places that you can check and just get information.
University Studying Slavery, that's the consortium
Right.
that's being formed that started at UVA. That's also.
That started off as Virginia Colleges and University Studying Slavery, and it expanded, but.
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about, a lot of the work has been done. It's just a matter of having to plow through it to find it, to identify, those various places that may have something that we can tap into that could be extremely helpful. So that is a. So I think if we could just, Sandy, if we could just get started there, that may help put us on this road of precision that Dr. Kenny is talking about, with understanding that these various, focuses, housing, and if put 6 of them, I think, that we would be focusing on. Because I think it's important to find and again identify experts across the country in these areas that have a lot more insight into how things happen, based on way before, I guess, redlining. It's sort of just putting African American when it comes to housing, just in certain areas, and that's where we're expecting to stay. So. Anything else that may be interesting here? Thank you. She was like, where's the exit door? All right, well, then I think that, do we want to, well, I guess those who are on, do they have a copy of the planning? And they do, okay. I don't know who else is on that, Dr. Alexander and.
Xavier Richardson should also be on.
Okay, all right, so is anyone else on the virtually, do you have any comment, any contribution, any?
This is Cassandra. I also recommend reaching out to 2 of the retired archivists at HBCUs, in particular, Tommy Bozier from Norfolk State and Lucius Edwards from Virginia State. A lot of the materials that are actually in those archival collections are not included in any listing. And so I think really delving a little bit more deeply into what's in the current collection and culling out a lot of that information is really, really important. And then, of course, the incredible collection at Hampton University's archives, I think, is something that must be looked at, because for years, that was the one place in the entire Commonwealth that collected information on African American history. And so really delving a little bit more deeply into what they have cataloged and how they have the materials cataloged can be a clue to the other institutions like the Library of Virginia that cataloged information differently. It didn't include a lot of information about Blacks who worked at or worked with prominent whites. So their histories, their stories are hidden within these larger collections that essentially have gone uncatalogued. So there can be some clues using the archival collections, collection listings at the HBCUs to find out more on the broader scale with the Library of Virginia.
We just had, you just brought in, have they started their opening their Department of Culture and African American History and Culture, right? Culture and History. And Dr. Tinsley is there. And he told me that, so I'm going to say to you, anything that he can do to help. So he's right there at our back door. And have found him to be very, very open. And willing to you know Dr. Tinsley?
I know about.
Okay.
So that was the question.
Uh-huh.
Please, this is an inappropriate question. My question is, after we do all of this, well, what outcome, intended outcome? Whether it's in the state, if it's here legislation, what is the dream and the vision for the outcome of this type of investment for this state in particular?
My vision or dream, if you're talking about, I'm just speaking from my perspective, that's why, put this in and trying to help address. First of all, I always say that this was the formal capital of the Confederacy. And as much as they did to sustain this peculiar institution, they need to have the same kind of commitment to identify the impact it has had on the lives of generations of people, okay? And one of the things that we can talk about this, but until there are some factual finds and it's in black and white, people are like, oh, so you're just talking about something. And they will, I don't know who else is going to, or if someone will come along and say, we've got to collect this information. But after collecting it, I think that we need to really look at it and start going to the next phase of, say, in terms of reparations, education, in areas that have just left the lives of so many people in generations, and I'm saying this, thinking out loud to say this, but generations of individuals sort of at a place that some of them seem not to be able to get out of. And so when you're talking about, putting funding in to a school systems that have not had the resources to help people. Basically, they've been given the minimum for those school systems. Well, let's go back and look at what the lack of education, what it has done to a group of people, one generation, generations of folks, and a race of people in comparison to another race. These things the only way that personally that I think that we're going to get to where we need to in society, period, is for us to start going back and doing as much as we can to invest in these places that there was, disinvestment. I just think that when you look at it, we've got to go back and try to fix it. I mean, people were living in across Virginia, but certainly this and stuck in Creighton Court and Fairfield Court and for how many, some 5 generations. We need to find ways to invest in housing and home ownership. And I think that if you look at some of the work that we have done, Senator, you can help me with that. I think that some of us have been looking at these things and said, we've got to address some of these challenges that come about as a result of this peculiar institution. And so let's go back and look at it, study, let's put it in black and white, you know, with the scholars and experts and everyone at the table helping us to collect this. And then let it become a public document, so that what you know, I know, you know, what the Black community is aware of, the white community is aware of. And now, how do we move forward to address these things? And that's what it's supposed to be, making recommendations on, you know, how do we, you know, the wrong that's been, you know, and it's, I don't care what, you know, it's the way things were handled, or as a, you know, and as a, I wasn't here. Were you?
I'm gonna pick up on the last comment that Joe made. Generally, when you have a study, you publish it and put it on the shelf. That isn't what I envision this to be. This isn't something to be published and put on the shelf. This is information that is to be collected and disseminated for information for not just us to know. It is for everybody to know it, and not just to know it, to understand it, and to understand that for this kind of information had consequences. And that those consequences is part of the reason for some of the stuff that we are continually dealing with today. And that the only way we're going to unravel it is that we understand what we're dealing with, not just but the facto, economic lives, and you know, our social and political lives, that it has all of these consequences. And it's a reality that we have to deal with.
And Dr. Kinney, I think it's been okay. It's been, but for some people, it's been already been left up. It has been okay. And so if I don't know, if I'm not made aware, then hey, I am not held responsible, you know, consciously or, you know, I'm just not. And I don't, the responsibility is to know, and then that's for all of us, and this helps us, everybody to understand it. But then also to say, that's why I need to put more, that's why more funds need to be put in Norfolk. That's why more in Petersburg. That's why more funds need to be contribute toward housing that will address what education and so that people will have, you know, those who are connected, you know, through DNA, that they will have an opportunity to get an education. And it should be different, because that was one of the greater sins against African Americans.
And that's the real source of the question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Senators, the answer is, this is not an investment for the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
This is an investment for transformation and the alteration of conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that when this work is done, that's not closure on the commission.
Right.
The work is really in front of us after this work is done.
And I think just to piggyback off of what Senator Locke was stating, you know, that by doing this work, later down the road, when we're finished, we'll probably be able to identify legislation that can be introduced. And just like Madam Chair said, even budgetary issues that we can put in the budget. So there will be tangible items that we can actually do, just saying, we did this study, great, it was wonderful. Go on home, finish doing what you're doing in your communities. No, we'll be able to come up with something to put in the budget, we'll be able to come up with legislation that can go on the books, that'll help us, that'll elevate our people. Because you still have people out there who are saying, I never owned slaves, you were never a slave, so you never have to deal with any of those issues. But we are discovering that years and years of things are there that are impacting our people. And so I'm really looking forward to what we can identify that can go in the budget and legislation that can be introduced to help elevate our people.
This is more generally responsive, I think. I don't want to take away from what anyone else said, but it's only in the context of carrying the weight that our ancestors left us that people talk about, I wasn't around back then, but when it comes time to collect and accept one's inheritance, that continues the dispossession of physical property, real property, and people are all too excited to celebrate and to benefit from realities that their parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles created and continue to perpetuate. So I'm hopeful as a citizen member of this commission that one of the outcomes is that we understand more broadly what our inheritance is. And I think we frame it in terms of reparations. And I think that's useful nomenclature. I think it's accurate. But another accurate piece is mapping out from the good, the bad, the ugly, what our inheritance is as ancestors of enslaved people. And perhaps the non-monetary or the less attractive inheritance that the descendants, so-called owners and masters of enslaved people, are now morally obligated to make good on. So I'm hopeful that we can start mapping with that.
Speak to this issue. Dr. King, transformational. Okay, all right. Well, the work plan, that's again, the draft work plan. We are going to take a look. Wait till it comes back in terms of the revision. Because some of these suggestions and things that now will be integrated into this.
I think this is enough to get the Dominique started
Right.
for the next, till the next commission.
I don't think that are asked anyway, if there's any public comment. Oh, hi, how are you?
How are you?
I'm wonderful. Yes, sir.
May I speak without my mask? I'm fully vaccinated. You
Yes,
don't
sir.
understand this thing? This is it.
It's a whole mess.
I appreciate that. It's free, you know, it just feels like my voice is going back. I take it off.
Share with us.
Remember me?
Hey, how are you? Yes, yes.
Quick question. Was land use and planning part of y'all's agenda with regards to de facto?
Not housing, land use was not.
This goes back to you. My name is Anthony Jones from Denver, and I retired from city council some years back and decided to become a farmer. My wife and I realized our dream of owning a small farm. we discovered that our small farm is in a part of the nation called the Southern Black Belt. Everybody familiar with that? And I remember coming back to this area back during the 1970s. I find out that that was a significant year as well, because there was a second migration that was going on, that people were coming back to the rural communities. All this I discovered while trying to save property in Dinwiddie County. Now, what's unique about my particular situation is that I'm caretaker of property that I was not born into. I was adopted into it. So it goes back to your point about people not wanting to pay the taxes and those sorts of things, because there are barriers there, okay? Now, the greatest thing that I think happened in Virginia with regards to my situation, or one of the greatest things, is the fact that at least Virginia started looking at the Partition of Heirs Act that was passed recently back July 1st, 2020. I know these dates well because I've been working to save our property since the mid-90s. I've been working, even while I was in high school, working real hard to save this property. So I got to a point where the previous law is that if land was partitioned and no one was able to accumulate that land, then the whole piece was sold. The only difference today is that it's limited to a parcel. And there's problems even with that because there's no vesting requirement, okay? Now, why do I know all this? Again, I say I'm going through this process, so I'm seeing it firsthand. The biggest problem with regards to legislation and outcomes, sir, is that when it comes to heirs property, the government is way too much involved to the point where people like myself can't even argue our cases on its merits. So in other words, prime example, when I start talking about heirs property, and I know Mr. Alexander, but the Black Family Land Trust. I think that's it. Okay. But anyway, when I had an opportunity to speak with Ms. Alexander at the time before the law was changed, they had a trust. Okay. And the idea was that one way of keeping land together was to put land into their trust. Now, I'm not badgering or speaking ill about that organization. I'm talking about the process. That was problematic because even if you do that, somebody has to be a beneficiary. So what I found out through this history of heirs property is that the laws were written in such a way that the actual true descendants of that property could never become beneficiaries. Okay, that's the main problem even today. So therefore, that's why this issue of being able to present a case on its merits is so important. Because what I did on behalf of our family is that I created our farm organization as an LLC. Okay, and I created a separate trust for my family that made the business the beneficiary of the trust. So therefore, even family members who were not participatory in this land process would still have protections under the LLC. And it would not give ownership specifically to one person. From many people that I've talked to with regards to this particular issue, the primary thing that people think is, I want this land for myself because they ain't gonna pay taxes. That was never my mindset. My mindset was, why should I pay for property that I already own? Okay, that's already ours. And so the issue became, we needed someone to lead our property. we didn't need the government tell us what we could do and what we couldn't do. So I would like to present and ask that you all consider doing two things. One, make sure that someone on your committee is knowledgeable about land use and land planning, because that's a very important aspect of understanding heirs property issues. The other aspect that I'd like you all to consider is when you think about legislation, actually coming out and visiting heirs properties. You come to mind, so you can see the progress that we're making and the years of just trying to get there. You know, and so I thank you for your opportunity. I'll elaborate further if you want, if there's any questions or whatnot. But I thank you for doing this, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's what I was just gonna say. So, apologies, could I say just couple words, Delegate McQuinn? I think that would fall clearly under economic opportunities and generational wealth,
Yeah.
which is in the legislation.
Yeah.
And I think that, and also labor exploitation post-Civil War is something that falls into that needs to be examined. And
That's very interesting, Anthony. And then we're gonna get ready to adjourn. But actually, just probably maybe somewhere between June and September, I went down to Charles City. And there was this place there called the Black Beach.
Yeah, Black Speak.
The Black Beach. That was property that after the emancipation of slavery, the slave master, or whatever terminology you want to use, didn't have the resources, the dollar to pay those who had been working on his property. So he gave them all of this land, or to live on the land, to do what, and they had lived there for absolutely forever, until around 2000, where there was some challenges that they had. They didn't have, some of them didn't have a deed. And it's a beautiful piece of land on beach, and I think it probably maybe was about, I don't know, 25, 30 acres of land. They had to go to court. And when they, the land then was sold in 2000. And they all had to get off of the land except for one of the descendants, who was left maybe with about 6 acres. And I talked to actually the Attorney General about it, because I'm like, something is clearly wrong with this picture. And this is not, I've also called a couple of the congressman's office to talk about it. So we're still talking about it, because I want to know if there's something that could be done to help this under these circumstances. I mean, 2000, this stuff is still happening, and they have been on this land all of those years. So there are some real issues that, you know, that we're gonna have to look at, go back and look at, and
Delegate, if I may, that's not the only case that's happened in the United States. It's also happened in South Carolina and in other beach towns. Okay, it's been a common practice throughout the 200 counties that make up the Southern Black Belt. All right, and yeah, if we're talking about Black history, I would say the first thing you want to do is get a bus and go to actually see these places and talk to the people. Everybody wants to talk to universities, but never to the people who are suffering. Come on out to the woods, and then you see what real Black history is.
thank you for that information. Okay, anything else? If not, then we're going to adjourn the meeting. You got nothing else to say? Okay. All right, this meeting is adjourned. What time is it? What? Yes.
3:14.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. And we look forward to Dominique to helping to be prepared. All right, thank you. All right, y'all have a good one. Safe traveling. And I hope you don't, Andrea, don't make class with snow. Oh, you have to clap, you definitely have to clap.
Today was actually my birthday.
Oh, yeah, we're probably gonna get 12 more tonight,
They
so.
called about 5. Starting at 11 o'clock.
You better hurry.
That's what I'm doing. Go straight home. I might get some food before I go to the house.
Yeah. You're right, you're right.
We already took everything out, so.
Yes, yes.
I just told him, and he said, where?
Oh, okay. Cool. No, I.
That's rather than.
Yeah.
Hi, New York, yeah.